Chapter 21 of Lotus Buds. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Recording by Gillian Hendry. Lotus Buds by Amy Wilson CARMICHAEL. Chapter 21. More Animals. In full contrast to Teddy Bear is that floppy child, the Coney. In Hart's Animals of the Bible, there is a picture of this baby, only the forepaws should be raised in piteous appeal to be taken up. The Coney is really a pretty child, with pathetic eyes and a grateful smile, but she was long in learning to walk, and felt aggrieved when we remonstrated. Her feet she considered were created to be ornamental rather than useful, and no amount of coaxing backed up with massage could persuade her otherwise. So she was left behind in the march, and when her contemporaries departed for the middle-aged baby's nursery, she stayed behind with the infants. And the infants had no pity. They regarded her as a sort of hassock, large and soft and good to jump on. More than once we have come into the nursery and found the big, meek child of 3 kneeling resignedly under a window upon which an adventurous 18 months wished to climb. And often we have found her prostrate and patient under the dancing feet of Dimples. However, the Coney can walk now. This triumph was effected with the help of an Indianized go-kart, which did what all our persuasions had entirely failed to do. But the process was not pleasant. The poor Coney would stand mournfully holding the handle of her instrument of torture, longing with a yearning unspeakable to sit down and give it up forever. Someone would pass, and hope would rise in her heart. She would be carried now, carried out of sight of that detested go-kart. But no, the callous-hearted only urged her to proceed. She would howl then with a howl that told of bitter disappointment. Sometimes she would sit down flat and regard the thing with a blighting glance, the hatred of a gentle nature roused to unwonted vehemence. Always her wails accompanied the rumbling of its wheels. The Coneys are but a feeble folk, yet they make their houses in the rocks. One day, in deep depression of spirits, the Coney arrived at the kindergarten. She sat down before the threshold, which is 3 inches high, and climbed carefully over it. She found herself in a new world, where babies were doing wonderful things and enjoying all they did. The Coney decided to join a class, and was offered beads to thread. Life with beautiful beads to thread became worth living, and it may be in the course of time that the tortoise will overtake the hare. In any case, we find much cheer in the conclusion of the verse, for if our Coney builds in the rock, her being rather feeble will not matter very much. Those who possess that friend of our youth, Alice, as illustrated by Sir John Tenniel, may find the photograph twice reproduced of our fat Cheshire cat. This baby is remarkable for 2 things: she smiles and she vanishes. The time to see the vanishing conducted with more celerity than Alice ever saw it is when the baby's warning call is sounded across the veranda and a visitor appears in the too near horizon. This baby then vanishes round the nearest corner. There is nothing left of her, not even a smile. In fact, the chief contrast between her and the cat among the foliage is that with our cat the smile goes first. Sunday morning, to return to the beginning, is full of possible misadventure. Sometimes the babies seem to agree among themselves that it would be well to be good. Then their admiring Siti and Amal have nothing to do but enjoy them. But sometimes it is otherwise. First one baby pulls her sister's hair, and the other retaliates, till the 2 get entangled in each other's curls. Piria Siti flies to the rescue, disentangles the combatants, and persuades them to make friends. Meanwhile, 3 restless spirits in bodies to match have crept out through the open door. It is too hot if we shut the doors, and we find them comfortably ensconced in forbidden places. The Beetle is a quiet child. She retires to a corner and looks devout. Presently a sound as of scraping draws our attention to her. "Beetle, open your mouth." Beetle opens her mouth. It is packed with whitewash off the wall. Then a scared cry rings through the nursery, and all the babies, imagining awful things imminent, tumble one on top of the other in a wild rush into refuge. It is only a large grasshopper which has startled the Cheshire cat, whose great eyes are always on the lookout for possible causes of panic. The grasshopper is banished to the garden, and the Cheshire Cat smiles all over her face. Peace restored, Dimples and the Owlet remember a dead lizard they found in a corner of the veranda, and set off to recover it. These two walk exactly like mechanical toys, and as they strut along hand in hand, or one after the other, they look like something wound up and going in a Christmas shop window. Presently they return with the lizard. Its tail is loose, and they sit down to pull it off. This is not a nice game, and something else is suggested. Dimple's mouth grows suddenly square. She wants that lizard's tail. Then a dear little child called Muff, because she ought to be called Huff if the name had not been already appropriated, who has been solemnly munching a watch, decides it is time to demand more individual attention. She objects to the presence of another baby on her city's lap. Why should two babies share one lap? The thing is self-evidently wrong. One lap, one baby should be the rule in all properly conducted nurseries. Muff broods over this in silence, then slides off the crowded lap and sits down disconsolate, alone. Tears come, big sad tears, as Muff meditates, and it takes time to explain matters and comfort without giving in to the one lap, one baby theory. We have several helpful babies. Dimples has been discovered paying required attentions to things smaller than herself, and the wax doll pats the rosebud if she thinks it will reassure her, when, as rarely happens, that pet of the family is left stranded on a mat. But Puck is the most inventive. It was one happy Sunday morning that we came upon her feeding the ratlet on her own account. The ratlet was making ungrateful remarks, and we hurried across to her and saw that Puck, under the impression doubtless that any hole would do, was pouring the milk in a steady stream down the poor infant's nose. Puck smiled up peacefully. She was sure we would be pleased with her. But the ratlet continued eloquent for very many minutes. Sometimes, but this is an old story now, our difficulties were increased by the spider's habit of whimpering, which had a depressing effect upon the family. This poor baby was a weak little bag of bones when first she came to us. The bag was made of shrivelled skin of a dusty brown colour. Her hair was the colour of her skin and hung about her head like tattered shreds of a spider's web. She sat in a bunch and never smiled. Something about her suggested a spider. Her Tamil name is Chrysanthemum, which by the change of one letter becomes Spider, so we called her Spider. At first we were not anxious about her, for such little children pick up quickly if they are healthy to begin with, as we believed she was. But she did not respond to the good food and care, and only grew thinner and more miserable as the weeks passed, till she looked like the first picture in a series of advertisements of some marvellous patent food, and we wondered if she would ever grow like the fat and flourishing last baby of the series. For 2 months this state of things continued. She grew more wizened every day, and the uncanny spider limbs and attitude gave her the air of not being a human baby at all, but a terrible little specimen which ought not to be on view, but should be hidden safely away in some private medical place, on a shelf in a bottle of spirits of wine. We are asked sometimes if such tiny things can suffer other than physically. We have reason to think they can. As all else failed, we took a little girl from school for whom the spider had an affection, and let her love her all day long, and almost at once there was a change in the sad little face of the spider. She had been cared for by an old grandfather after her mother's death, and it seemed as if she had fretted for him and needed someone all to herself to make up for what she was missing. This little girl, the Codfish by name, was devoted to the spider. She nestled her and played with her, or attempted to, I should say, for at first the spider almost resented any attempts to play. "She doesn't know how to smile," said the Codfish disconsolately, after a week's petting and loving had resulted only in fewer whimpers, and not as yet in smiles. A few days later she came to us and announced with much emotion, "She has smiled 3 times." Next day the record rose to 7. After that we left off counting. The spider is fat and bonny now. Her skin is a clear and creamy brown, and her hair has lost its dustiness, but she still likes to sit crumpled up, and a small alcove in the kitchen is her favourite haven when tired of the world. Seen unexpectedly in there, bunched in a tight knot, her dark, keen little eyes peering out of the light-coloured little face, she still suggests a spider, but it is a cheerful spider, which makes all the difference. End of chapter 21.